And welcome to the VSA Capital 5 Minute Morning Miner on Friday, the 16th of December. And I'm actually back. I've been away all week. I've been with this wretched lurgy or flu, whatever you want to call it, but I can tell you it absolutely knocks you sideways. I've been so ill. It's unbelievable. But I'm back, Paul. How are you?
No, I'm all right. Thank you. All right. It looks pretty cold outside too. So,
Well, it's cold. There's no trains. I don't think anybody's going to go to work today, are they?
I don't know. A few of us will, I suppose.
I think it's going to be pretty quiet in the city. Anyway,
Mhm.
news flow this morning is also pretty quiet. I don't know if there's anything you want to desperately mention. If not, as it's a Friday, we're gonna do a commodity special. And as it's the
Yeah,
last one, sorry,
I
let me
thought I
finish,
would
Paul.
mention the
Paul,
two big.
please. I know I've been away for a few days, but you've got to let me finish. Have you forgotten?
Go ahead.
I was just about to say it's coming up to Christmas. It's the last podcast before Christmas, so we've got to do gold, frankincense, and mirth. We won't do the frankincense and mirth. We'll just do the gold.
Okay.
Now you can have your word.
Well, I was going to talk about copper a little bit first. It's two big pieces of news out today in the copper space among the large cap players. First of all, Rio Tinto announced the completion of the acquisition of TSX listed Turquoise Hill, which has been coming about for some time, and that consolidates the ownership in the Oyu Tolgoi copper mine, the big one in Mongolia. And the second bit of news is that the country of Panama is unhappy with the lack of progress to get a deal with First Quantum to change the terms on the Cobre Panama mine. So they have told First Quantum to shut it down for at least some period of time here.
I mean, maybe copper's the commodity we should be talking about, but there's going to be an almighty squeeze here. Did I see somewhere the other day that copper stocks are at an all-time low or something?
Yeah, it's talking about the inventories above ground in the bonded warehouses, particularly across both the Shanghai market and the London market. So, yeah, it's really tight supply at the moment.
I mean, it's one of those commodities that everyone is saying is going to go up. It's going to go up. There's not enough supply. It's not going up quite yet. But with that, we're not going to talk about it here. But it probably is. It's one of those commodities I expect a lot of people will tip for next year.
Yes, that's right.
Anyway, right, that's the
Gold.
news.
Yeah,
Gold. What do you think about
gold.
gold, Paul?
$1,780 an ounce roughly today. Silver in the 22.34 range. I see in the numbers here. Gold seems to be playing around with a trading range here at this particular point in time. As far as output, global output is concerned, it's been relatively flat over recent years. It might change 2 or 3% one way or the other. But overall, it was up just a little bit in the past year. In 21, so we'll see whether it's up a little bit again in 22. But you realize that the gold price had moved over the last several years from the $1,300 range up into $2,000 range, and yet it didn't really spur a lot of new production. So there is obviously some constraint, I guess, as far as miners being able to bring more gold up out of the ground with the falling grades that we see around the world.
But isn't that the whole key to why you'd be a bull of gold? Is that there really are no more what I describe as mega gold projects out there, i.e., the sort of 3 million ounce type projects that can be brought on stream, are there? Or is that
Well, I
a
would call
fallacy?
mega projects the ones that are above 10 million ounces. That's the ones that uh, ones like Barrick and Newmont are really looking for, polyuse and that sort of thing. And yes, they are out there still. We've got ones like Gaylor Creek there in BC that hasn't been developed yet, as well as some in Russia and elsewhere. So they are out there still. But the thing is their capital cost is in the billions as well for those size of operations, and there's got to be some decent incentive pricing, which would indicate that financing for these miners will be both solid and long lasting.
So what is in terms of from an investor point of view, let's just say, I mean, obviously gold moves no one knows quite why it moves. It's a little bit of a sentiment-driven situation, but it's perceived as a defensive situation that hasn't necessarily worked this year with the war in Ukraine not really pushing the price up. The dollar does have an impact on it, doesn't it?
Yes, it sure does. Gold very much acts as a trading offset to the U.S. dollar. So the way the dollar goes, there's usually an inverse correlation to a rather high degree in gold moving in the opposite direction. Although that isn't reliable on a day-to-day basis, it's more reliable on a quarter-on-quarter basis, I would say. That being said, it's also important to realize that it's priced in U.S. dollars as opposed to the pricing of gold in other currencies. Like, for instance, this year it's made record highs in a number of currencies other than the U.S. dollar. So it isn't necessarily a proxy for a domestic situation where a miner may lie, like in Australia, for instance.
Okay, so let's just assume that gold's been what I describe as relatively flat for the last 3 years, i.e. between about, I don't know, 1,700 and 2,000. Let's assume it stays flat in 2023, i.e. within that range. All right, what are the gold stocks you'd pick, Paul, that you really like, that you think people could make money on in 2023?
Well, let me refine that further. Do you want me to mention producers or developers or explorers?
You can have a couple of each, Paul.
Okay, all right. Okay, among the producers, I like on the London market, I like Shanta Gold, for instance, is looking very promising going forward here. On the TSX, I would say two companies be on the lookout for M&A activity actually for next year, and that's Skeena Resources and Benchmark Metals on those two. And then in the exploration front, you have to have some interest in some really speculative plays that you see out there, like Elemental Altus that's now in Egypt, for instance, or our own Tectonic Gold there in Australia. We're waiting on some assay results from them. So there's definitely a lot of ways to play out there, depending on your own investment criteria.
Well, there you go. That was completely unprompted, I can assure you as well. And we didn't just talk about VSA Capital corporate clients either. Very good, Paul. Well, that's a few little Christmas crackers for people to have a look at and think about possibly buying a few for 2023. On that note, Paul, we will be back next week, but not next Friday.
Okay, and I'll be back Tuesday.
Okay.
Very good.